My name is Linda Golick. I am the Health and Wellbeing Consultant in the Bellin region of Amplify Health, and I am so pleased to be joined by two of our fantastic licensed behavioral health therapists today. We have Hannah Bauer and Michaela Vandenboom. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, thanks for joining me for some more great mental health discussions. Oh, so glad you're with us today. So, I want to start out today by talking about, a trend that I think we are hearing more and more about. According to the National Wellness Institute, there are over 53 million Americans providing unpaid care for another person, and that includes people with disabilities. And I know that many people get into this place of they're raising children, they're also caring for parents, they're trying to hold down their jobs, they're trying to, take care of their own, responsibilities and obligations. And so that caregiving curve really throws a curveball in people's lives. And it isn't something that has been, I think, really thoroughly discussed a whole lot, but it's coming more to light now as we look at different upcoming wellness trends. So I wanted to dive into that today with the two of you. So why don't we start here from a perspective of what you're seeing, with some of the people that you all have as your patients. Is this a relevant topic in our region?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All populations.
Yeah. And I think from our end, sometimes too, we get the part where they're already burnt out, right? And it's already really hard to regulate and take care of ourselves because it's just the demand is so high.
So what does that look like when somebody is in a place of being a caregiver and they really are burnt out? What does that look like?
I think that can look like a lot of things. I think sometimes what's hard is not realizing how burnt out you are or how just way past your limit you are until it feels like just everything is falling apart. But it can affect all aspects, how well you're eating, how well you're sleeping, how you respond to different stressors that would normally be a part of life, but you just don't have as much to give. Irritability, saying no to things, just not having the energy to spend time with the people that really do pour into you, but you're just so depleted.
Right. And I think
What
a
have
lot
you
of
seen?
times, oh, go ahead,
No,
sorry.
I was going to say, Michaela, what have you seen in your patients?
Well, along with Hannah, like we get them when they're ready past that point too. And I think a lot of the times they're like, okay, this is a transition period that we're going through. I'm just gonna truck it out till we get through this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna truck it out till we get through this. And then things continue and they continue and it's months or years or whatever it is down the line. Or they're to
Mm-hmm.
the point where they're like, okay, well, this is not getting any better. This is just getting worse. And they don't know who to go to for support to help them or what to do. And then that's when they come to the office and are like, this is what's going on. These are the concerns that we have. And not only do we struggle with the things that Hannah mentioned, but there's also the big financial strain too. I mean, if we're looking at like the caregiver aspect of like younger working people that are caring for younger children or older adults, a lot of the times that takes out of your work day or you're missing work, and that adds a financial strain to that too.
Mm-hmm.
A term that comes to mind when I think about the caregiving curve is the word guilt. And guilt in terms of we tell ourselves that this is our place in life and we're obligated to it. And it's something that we just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it. And then you feel guilty because you feel like you're giving this energy. And then maybe you feel guilty because you're not taking care of yourself, or maybe spending time with other people that count on you and things like that. So how can people start to manage those guilty feelings?
Michaela.
Well, I think it's important that you have your own, try to have your own support system too within that. Like, know what your limits
Mm-hmm.
are, know what your boundaries are, know where to go for support. And a lot of the times that it does take seeking out professional care or like additional community resources. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that I didn't even know were supports
Yeah.
for caregivers until I've seen patients of my own. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that go through like the county resources to aging and disability. I know that through the VA, there are specific care group support groups for them, and there's therapists that are just designated for those individuals. So it really is about prioritizing your own needs too in that and recognizing like I am only one person, I'm human. I can be there, but I also need to know that I have to have an army of my own to tackle this battle as well.
Yeah, I think, along those lines too, it's pausing before you agree to things. Like, even if you're feeling a sense of obligation, it's just pausing and being like, well, where are my limits? Like, well, will I know and recognize when I'm getting closer to that limit? Will I know and recognize what burnout looks like to me? Can I afford to burn out? Right? Because a lot of times people are pushing past that. And I think the other piece is being willing to talk about it. I think that gets missed a lot because people just, we try to take on as much as we can and then do that. And we don't want to admit that maybe we took on too much or maybe we need help in certain, aspects. I think, there's so many options and opportunities for intervention to link up with some of those resources like Michaela had mentioned, but we have to be willing to say, hey, I'm having a hard time here, or I'm feeling really
Mhm.
overwhelmed when this happens. Like, what do you recommend? And there's a lot of resources out there if you are willing to ask and willing to look.
I think it
And
also depends on the
I want to put a plug in because I actually had met with someone from the Brown County ADRC, and all counties have an ADRC, for those of you
Hmm.
watching or listening to this. And I met with the caregiver coordinator. So,
Mhm.
specifically, the programming that is available, the support groups that are available for the people doing the care. There's a lot out there. And I think if you aren't necessarily in that situation, you may not have heard about this.
Mhm.
So, for those of you listening or watching, make a note that if and when that time in your life comes where you feel like you need some additional help because you have found yourself in a caregiver role, the ADRC is just a great place to start.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I also want to kind of bring to light what it does in the workforce. So, a lot of the people that we're connected with are our business partners and people that are offering healthcare and healthcare services through Amplify by Bellin. And we want to bring to light that your workforce likely has a whole lot of people that are in this particular position, and they're still working and they're one of your employees, but they're in this position where they potentially are trying to juggle outside of all the mayhem of life. They're also maybe becoming a caregiver in some ways. So what would the two of you put as recommendations out there, for employers as far as how to help their employees or how to keep a pulse on the health and well-being of their people that may be dealing with something like this?
I think it's
Yeah.
important to have flexibility within,
Hmm.
making sure you're transparent with your employer and having flexibility and like, okay, I know my job duties, I know my requirements, but also like this is a big component of my life right now, and I need to make sure that I can tend to both of those things as well. I think in our setting, we obviously collaborate with a lot of people like case managers and stuff. I think even on a personal, like professional level, it would be good to be able to have those conversations to know they have a wealth of knowledge. They know all the resources out there. So just being able to say, you know what, I don't want to talk to you from a patient to professional basis, but I just want to know like what recommendations would you have out
Hmm.
there and making sure that those people are available to talk with us as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely like advocating for yourself. And yeah, when you know you have these resources available, that maybe you're not advocating for a patient, but just that word of mouth. And then as an employer, like I think what's something that can be really helpful is just like those check-ins and those reminders. Because again, yeah, when we're first hired, maybe we get all of this information and it's like, hey, you have this, this, and this if you need it. But life happens and we forget a lot of those conversations and we lose a lot of those papers. So having those check-ins and having, your employer say like, do you need anything from me? Like, do we need to change things? Like, yes, you have your job and you have your tasks, but like, how can we change this around? So maybe you can still get it done, but you still have a little bit more of yourself if things are overwhelming, on a personal end.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, it just, I think the transparency piece is huge, for people listening today. Don't feel like you have to do it alone. Don't feel like it has to
Mhm.
be all you. There are resources out there, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And sometimes I'm always surprised too if I'm dealing with something, for the first time, chances are there are other people in the workplace that have dealt
Mhm.
with that already. And your leader or your supervisor may have already been in that position themselves, and you might find that they're extra compassionate, for your circumstances. So then how do we, those that are in the caregiving role, how do we make sure that we are also, tending to our own mental health and make sure that we aren't down the road to a burnout situation?
Well, like what Hannah said, you got to identify your boundaries and know what your limits are. I think one of the things that's important to remember is when you step into this caregiver role, sometimes it's unexpected and you have no plan for it. And in other situations, like if we're talking about like aging or elderly, a lot of the times a caregiver is going through that transition period in life on their own too. So they're facing all those challenges and the new transitions along with caring for the spouse or the family member that is probably
Mhm.
no longer the person that they've known their whole life. So
Right.
just knowing like, hey, I know that I need to make sure I'm prioritizing these things and stay up on all of my general well-being and care, but also give myself a little bit of grace and credit because this might be something I've never been trained in or never experienced, or it's
Mhm.
something that is a transition period for myself as well.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Was just gonna say, what comes to mind for me is maybe this is when you let some of that stuff go that you've always done,
Mhm.
So rather than putting up 3 Christmas trees this year because that's what you've always done, maybe you do 1 because you have this extra
Yes.
chunk of time that's being taken up, and don't put, all these things on yourself that are impossible to accomplish, if priorities have shifted, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's pausing and some things need to be reprioritized. Some things you're gonna say no to, but I think ultimately it's just I usually tell people to try to figure out like what are your anchors? Like what are those like 3 or 4 things that you need to do to be okay? Because we do so much throughout a day just to check in with ourselves, just to, our self-care, our nightly routine, our morning routines, but we can't always have time for all of those things. So as a baseline, if we're trying to take care of ourselves, we have to pick those 2, 3, 4 things that, okay, if I do this, I know I'm okay. I can comfortably let the rest of those things go. If I can't get it all done, that's fine. As long as I'm in one piece and I can still show up tomorrow, I just need to get these 2 or 3 things done for myself and I can feel good about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, great discussion as always, ladies. Any parting thoughts as far as those caregivers go? Anything else that you can recommend for them?
Just remember you're likely not alone in whatever situation you're in. There's other people that are probably going through similar, if not exact same things.
Yeah, and you're human at the end of the day. You can only do so much. You can't do it all and you shouldn't have to by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Hannah, Michaela, licensed behavioral health therapist at Amplify Health by Bellin. Always great discussion, always good content on how we can continue to tend to our mental health. So incredibly important. So thanks to those who are watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, share this podcast, and we'll see you next time.